Okay, so we're going to start this session by talking about environmental related to the data mining exercise. So last week you went over the socio-demographic areas and collected your data on a number of things such as age, gender, income, um, and poverty level. And today we're going to go through how to gather some information related to the environmental aspects and overall how they impact social problems. So that's going to include education, recreation, transportation, air quality, water quality, and then other environmental things that you might be considering related to your population of interest. So the first thing you want to do is to access the information that is on the left side of your Blackboard course under the data mining sources provided to you. And you're not required to use these specific sources, but I'm going to walk you through how they might be handy in gathering your information. The first item that you're going to be looking at is education, and you can find that under the first link under that set of resources on Blackboard. That's under the American Fact Finder, so you plug in your zip code. For this one, I'm using the example of 52804, which is where St. Ambrose is, specifically the Center for Health Sciences Education is located. Once you plug in that a zip code, it's gonna pop up. The bar on the left is how it'll look for you in your view, and you want to simply click on the education tab, and then that's going to pop up the percentage of educational attainment. In other words, the percentage of high school graduates or higher in your community of interest. Why is that important? You'll want to go back to analyzing this in relation to health outcomes and the information we talked about earlier in this course, health disparities, and in particular, folks who have access to an education, then there is a direct correlation between education and health outcomes. And so in this particular community, 91.1%, is that a good amount or something that would need to be addressed through some health interventions or some community-wide interventions? That would need to be determined based upon your analysis of this data. But do compare your community's health attainment, educational attainment to another community's. The next item is recreation. So one place you might find information on recreation is the county website in wherever your community of interest resides. So in this particular example, then Scott County, Iowa is where Davenport or 52804 resides. So I simply went to that website and looked at the community. It also gives you a lot of other information on that site as well. But the one area I want to clue into here is under the things to do. There's a lot of different recreation things. There's arts, museums, things of that nature, parks. And so you will be able to identify your similar information in your community. So I'm not looking for detail, just what kind of variety of things are available in your community related to recreation. Another source for this information may also be a citywide website as well, so you might consider looking at the city if you don't have access to the county-wide data. Speaking of the city, the next item here is transportation, and that you want to go to the closest municipality website as you can. And in this case, I'm at the City of Davenport's website, and I was able to pull up their transportation and there's bus routes that are outlined as you see on the screen in front of you. What I would tell you is this: when you look at and start to analyze this data, transportation, is this transportation sufficient for a community? And it depends on the community and it depends on their needs. But I will tell you, in this community, it looks like they have several different routes that run. I could go into detail and look further on that website about when they run, but the general information I'm asking you to consider is this: if they have bus routes but they only run during the day, not on the weekends, then are there populations that are unable to access services based upon limited transportation? The other thing to consider is your rural community. As you can see here, this bus route covers a lot of the areas in town, but how are folks in the rural community getting access to the services that they need? That's one thing I'd ask you to look at in your community of interest. The next item is air quality, and this is where you're going to go back to that set of resources under the data mining exercise tab on your Blackboard site. So if you go to the EPA.gov website that's available there, and you'll see there's on the left of this page, you're going to see what it looks like when you get to that website. You simply plug in your zip code to learn about conditions where you live, and then on the right is where I came up with the air quality for my community example here in Davenport. And so it gives county-wide information. Again, that's fine. County-wide data is good to be able to look at for something like air quality or water quality. If you need more information about the implications of what these figures mean, there's more information that's shared within the folder in this week's session as well. But this is the detail in which I'd like you to share for your community. How is that air quality? Not only how it is, but what are the implications for individuals who are challenged with respiratory conditions that may be impacted by the air quality. The next thing is the water quality, and that's going to be found under that same tab under the EPA.gov. Again, you're going to plug in the zip code. It'll come up with a listing similar to what I've screenshotted over on the right here. The big thing to know about this is that if you look at the list and say, well, are these problems or not, you can see that there's some areas that are impaired. But if you look at the major source, what is the major source for the water in this particular community that I'm looking at? It's the Mississippi River, and that is listed as good. So this, in my opinion, at this point would not be an area water quality that I would lean to for my community diagnoses or my nursing diagnoses in particular. But I still want you to gather this data and analyze it for your particular community, because that may not be the case in your community. The final is I leave open as other. What are some other things that you might consider for your community that may not be listed here in terms of environmental? One example could be a weather-related event. You live in a community that has either tornadoes or hurricanes or floods, things of that nature that put the population at risk based upon those environmental considerations. If so, you'll want to take a look at that and gather some data and analyze that data as well. Otherwise, that completes this portion of the data mining exercise, and I look forward to reading your environmental assessments of your community.